Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this conversation. I think we all know what's before us. My name is Moses Mwase. I work with ALP Dispute Settlement Hub, and we're happy to host you together with a panel of very experienced gentlemen. Unfortunately, we were unable to have ladies join us for one reason or the other. So before anybody should accuse us of being gender insensitive, please accept our apologies. I think most of the ladies that were interested in this were, for one reason or the other, unable to participate. But welcome. We will be diving into this conversation regarding the matter involving the awarding of the championship for the Confederation of African Sports final, which, as you're all aware, took place in Morocco, resulting in a lot of controversy. But this comes off a backdrop of our just concluded conversation that we had during the week of 9th and the 13th of March, where we held what we described as Gumzo La ADR in Kampala to touch base on matters pertinent with respect to alternative dispute resolution. Gumzo, as we dubbed it, comes from is a shortened version of Mazungumzo, which is a Swahili word for discourse. So, in the spirit of having continuous discourse, would like to dive right into this conversation. And I will be introducing our speakers briefly. But one of the speakers is here with me, Mr. Brian Tuka. I think for most Ugandans, he needs no introduction. All of you know Brian. I'm going to invite Brian to introduce himself, and then perhaps I'll also invite the other speakers to introduce themselves after that.
Good afternoon to everyone who is part of the discussion. Glad to be here and to be part of this quite important discussion, however controversial and chaotic it's been. My full name, for purposes of saving time, I cut it to Tuka because the full name is Tuka Singular. But by the time probably Raymond Hack and Ikena Okoli get done with Tuka Singular, the discussion will be done. So I decided to cut it to Tuka for purposes of saving a few people. So I work with the Next Media Group. I'm a sports journalist, done it over 15 years. And I'm glad to be here to talk some African football and with some of great minds here.
That is Brian Tuka. We also have Mr. Ikena Okoli, a senior advocate of Nigeria. He's a lawyer of many years, but also an arbitrator with an interest in sports law and governance. Mr. John Ohaga does not need introduction as well, as many of you have seen him presiding over our sports, very many sports matters, especially in Kenya, where he's been at the head, is the chairperson emeritus of the Sports Tribunal in Kenya. He's a senior arbitrator. He works with triple OK advocates, and he's been quite an authority in the area of resolution of sports disputes. Mr. Raymond Hack has served in many disciplines, particularly football, and lately aquatics. He's also involved in leadership as far as anti-doping is concerned. I'm going to invite the gentlemen, once they make their opening statements, maybe to say a little bit more about themselves. But finally, Alex Luganda, who we also know very well, is an experienced Ugandan lawyer. He's a chairman emeritus of the FIFA Legal Committee, the Ugandan confederation responsible for football. He's a former member of the CAF Appeals Board, and is also a director in charge of legal affairs at Vipers Sports Club. He's also a sports lawyer, and he's in charge of Ahamak Advocates, where he's the managing partner. So we have an interesting array of experts here, and we're going to dive into this conversation. The rules of being on the platform is that we'd like to request you to keep your microphone muted, so that we can allow the speakers to engage without any disruptions. Would like to keep this to just about 2 hours, so that we can allow you to continue about your business, so that again, the conversation will continue on other fora. So welcome to this discourse, and we hope that you find it fruitful. So without further ado, I'm going to invite the gentlemen to, first of all, give an opening statement. But before we do that, maybe if I were just to start us off, gentlemen, in one word, and starting with you, Brian, can you describe the feeling of a fan who bought a Senegal champions jersey on Jan 19th, only to be told now in March that Senegal is no longer the champion? From a journalistic point of view, what are your thoughts on this, Brian?
To start with, I think as Africa, we find ourselves in a very unfortunate position to be discussing this, and looks like we're going to be discussing it for a very long time, unfortunately for the wrong reasons. My disappointment starts with a tournament that would have been one of the best on the African continent, if not the best. We would have been discussing how well Morocco hosted the tournament in terms of infrastructure, but also the talent on show. We weren't looking at just only the talent on show in regards to Africa, but some of the best in the world. And as years have gone by, I think Africa has grown in terms of talent with what we have available. As you could clearly see how much the European clubs were crying out about the players are going to be missing when they were headed to the AFCON. That should have been the discussion before AFCON, after, and probably even up to now. Here we are discussing a decision that was made by a group of gentlemen. I don't know if there was any lady a part of that somewhere, and this is what we're discussing. It's very unfortunate. And in a public court of opinion, clearly I feel for all the football fans, but also sports fans, not only in Africa, but across the world, because they would have loved to be discussing something else. And I also feel sorry now for Morocco. While they pushed for this, clearly they did a few things right, but nobody cares about them now because of a decision that has been made. I'm quite hopeful, even when I'm not a lawyer, that I can prove cases wrong or right. I'm quite optimistic that by the end of the year, we'll still call Senegal champions. But definitely, the whole of Africa was utterly in shock, surprised at the decision made after a referee blows his final whistle, which should be pretty obvious that once that happens, clearly, there shouldn't be any other decision made, but CAF did otherwise.
Right. Thank you, Brian. Alex, tell us, what are your thoughts? Alex, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I'm good now. And thank you very much, Moses and Brian, plus all the other panelists and the people listening to us. Maybe for me, I have three things to say. One, I think the unwritten rule number one, that is of football, that is common sense, suffered a stillbirth as far as the CAF appeal decision is concerned. Two, the decision of the CAF appeals board may have been legally right. And I'm saying may have been legally right because it is still subject to the appeal to CAF in the strict interpretation and application of the rules, but it lacks legitimacy. And that is very important to highlight. And thirdly, as I take leave with my opening remarks, I think justice delayed is justice lost. Football moves like a river. We start from the first whistle and it's supposed to end on the final whistle. So the ref blows the whistle to begin the game and also blows the whistle that finishes the game and ends the game. So all business of justice, sporting justice, should take place within that time. And where it's delayed, like in this context, where we are having it 2 months after, then it is derailed and denied. Thank you.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, from a viewpoint of justice, Alex, isn't 2 months? Anyway, we shall get into that later. But yes, your views are very well taken. Mr. Raymond Hack, would you like to comment on this in terms of your opening statement? What would you tell a fan who is buying a jersey for Senegal as champion, and then 2 months later, somebody's telling them that, look, Senegal, you are not the champion? Raymond, you're on mute. Unmute yourself first, please. Still muted, Raymond.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation. Well, mine is slightly different. I don't believe that the appeal board made the right decision for one specific reason. If you look at the International Football Association board's rules, it says the referee has the final say. He's entitled to determine exactly what he wants in terms of the period that the whistle is in his hands and in terms of sporting integrity. For me, football is played on the field of play. It is not played in the boardrooms. It is not played anywhere by administrators. It's played by the players for the benefit of the spectators, the supporters, and everything like that. The other thing that I find very, very strange is you can't have two bites of the cherry. If Morocco had felt aggrieved by the referee not blowing the whistle when Senegal walked off or allegedly walked off for the period of time, then they should have turned around to the referee to say, yes, we will come back, but we will come back under protest. That is the normal thing in football. They didn't come back under protest. They took the penalty. They missed the penalty. They then went into two sections of 15 minutes each way. And at the end of that, they lost the game. So that is the end when the referee blows the whistle. The problem that we have is that the CAF regulations have not been updated, I would say, certainly for the last 10 years. And they're contrary to what the International Football Board Association board rules say. They don't take that into account. If you read their Article 82 and 83, it says, and specifically 84, it says the team which contravenes the provisions of 82 and 83. It doesn't say 82 or 83. It says and. In the English language, and is together, or is separate. So they made an error there. The other thing that I find very strange is the perception that is created about the appeal board, in the sense that I was always under the impression, and certainly while I was at CAF, and I was there for nearly 20 years, if you were elected to the appeal board or the disciplinary board, you had to be independent of a football association. In this particular matter, there were three people that sat on that appeal. One of them was the president or a senior member of the Tunisian Football Federation. Now, the perception that is created is the closeness between Tunisia and Morocco. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I'm just saying that's a perception. So on that basis, I really believe that the fan who bought the jersey for Senegal should keep the jersey, because I think in the end, sanity will prevail, and CAF will come to the right decision, because it's sporting integrity. It's not in the boardroom. It's not by administrators. It's players on the field of play.
Amazing. Thank you, Raymond. Mr. Okoli, Senior Counsel, do you want to jump in before we can have Mr. Ohaga with the final say? Ikena, you there? Yes.
It's Moses. I'll prefer to keep it very short at this time. Just if I were a fan who bought a Senegal jersey, I think that's what you asked. As far as I'm concerned, if I were a fan, the decision to strip Senegal of the cup is diabolical. I'll just keep it at that for now. Simple.
Right.
So I'll wear my jersey. As far as I'm concerned, we are champions of Africa.
Okay. Finally, Mr. Ohaga. If this were a panel, you can see now what the majority of the judges would be saying. But Mr. Ohaga, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Moses. And thank you for inviting me to this, this conversation. Some of you might know that I have already put some thoughts on LinkedIn because I find this matter to be of great interest to me and to anybody who is truly interested in sports, A, dispute resolution, and B, sports governance, both of which interest me greatly. But because I have been chair of a sports tribunal and I'm now involved in law reform around sports, I'm trying to be as measured as possible. So I think I would separate three issues. First issue was Senegal's conduct sanctionable? Absolutely. The second thing is, did CAF have jurisdiction to discipline misconduct? Of course it does. Third, and this is the real governance issue, can a final that the referee resumed and completed be converted into a boardroom forfeiture 2 months later without weakening confidence in the competition? I think that's the real issue. You asked about the composition of the panel. We are fortunate that the panel was actually chaired. The original disciplinary panel was chaired by Madam Jerry Onyango, who is my contemporary in Kenya. She was actually deputy chair of the Sports Disputes Tribunal, and so I know her very well.
She's on the call, actually.
She is on the call. I'm very glad to hear that. Because I want to say that the disciplinary board actually answered that question in a very careful way. It found that Senegal had temporarily left the field, but the ref did not expressly authorize that departure. Nor did he issue a clear stay on or return ultimatum under a risk of forfeiture. He then authorized resumption and completion of the match. As the concept note records, Morocco participated in the restart. Raymond had said they took the penalty and they played through extra time. On that basis, the board seems to have read Articles 82 and 84 as aimed at a definite withdrawal or interruption, not a match resumed and concluded under the referee's authority. This was my reading of how the disciplinary board dealt with it. Now, the appeal board appears to have reached the opposite result. We have to say here that the CAF statement that I've seen gives us the outcome, but it does not give us the reasoning. So we are still blind as to the appeal board's reasoning. And for me, that is precisely why this matters for East Africa 2027, for our Pamoja endeavor, and for calendar reform. I want to say that in the end, and my philosophy is that any legal outcome must have legitimacy, and in whose eyes is legitimacy carried? In the eyes of the players and in the eyes of the fans. I think These are the two most important constituencies. And the question that I would leave with all of you is, was the appeals board decision a legitimate one in your eyes? That's really, I will not answer it, but I think that you can each answer that for yourselves. Moses, that's what I would say to start with. As to your question about the guy who's bought the Senegal jersey, it has been described as diabolical. I would say that that individual feels dispossessed of the meaning of that jersey, the result that that jersey represents for that individual. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ohaga. Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, I think we'd like to dive a little bit deeper now that we've had this one out of the way. But I think everybody on this call is aware what has happened. I think the only difference right now is that Senegal has finally filed an appeal at CAS, as we found out late yesterday, to challenge the decision that was taken. And it's good you mentioned Senior Counsel Njeri Onyango. We will not put her on the spot because of her role in this. It's just good to know that she's here and listening. Yeah, we are also live on YouTube, and I think we will, for those of you who will share the link in your different groups, so that for those of you who might not be able to follow here, you can follow on YouTube. But starting with the only sports journalist on this panel, Brian Tuka. First of all, we want to understand the public court of opinion. There's been very many comments, and I think you also used are you the one who said diabolical? It was Ikena who said diabolical. Ikena said diabolical, which summarizes it all. We would like to know, what is the
diabolical as a fan?
Yes.
Because that's the question.
Right. Well, Tuka would like to know, what is the public court of opinion saying? You know, where you are trending in your circles as a journalist. And we know that there's been past incidents that are nearly the same at FIFA level, especially where we've had near similar examples. Is this something you can comment on, Brian? We want to know what the public is saying, since you sit in the public space as a sports journalist who hosts a very big sports show on television. And of course, we'd also like to know if a Ugandan team faced a similar scenario, how do you think local media and our fans would respond?
Well, to start with, I think the public court of opinion is pretty clear now with what we have heard from everyone saying here. I think the representation of what everyone else thinks of the ruling, I have struggled to find anybody who was who's in agreement. Those that could have been in agreement were in agreement out of, without due respect, I think, ignorance. But when you give it thought and look at it critically, it's an outright wrong decision by the appeals board to award Morocco the trophy. It's that simple. And I think also, from my side, I think most of the people on the continent were supporting Senegal. So the fact that you take away their trophy, it only means one thing, that they are never going to agree with it. It's that simple. And that's why sometimes I even feel sorry for Morocco, whether wrong or right. I think there could have been a few Moroccans who are in agreement that the trophy should stay with Senegal, but it's completely different from what we see. So I think most of the people, because they wanted Senegal, definitely they disagree with the decision and find it extremely wrong. And I think for me, it also goes beyond the public opinion. For everyone to be here discussing this, it's because it's a concern. It's been an embarrassment in terms of a decision to the whole of Africa and African football. Like I said, we could have been here talking about how good a tournament we had in Morocco in terms of infrastructure. I think everything was going on. For the most of the people who are watching the games from Morocco enjoyed it until that period. Definitely the conduct of Senegal, not one that we should condone. But again, if you don't apply the rules in the moment when the rule should be applied, I'm not so sure you're right about it doing it 2 months later. So I think for me, it's been such an embarrassment, and the public definitely is not on the side of the guys who made the ruling. And like I've been saying since this ruling came out, by the end of the year, Senegal would still be African champions. There's absolutely no right. I mean, this is the first time I believe in an opinion I have that involves legalities, even when I'm not a lawyer. For the first time, I believe I'll be right on this one. And I think clearly CAS should be able to overturn that. And then you asked the question about if a Ugandan club has been through that. I'll tell you something, Moses. One, the Ugandan clubs have been in it for quite a while. The difference here is the level at which this has happened. I mean, we are talking about the biggest showpiece on the African continent. I mean, we can ignore all facts. I'm sure the gentleman, Owaga, Raymond, Ekena may not know this. Alex Luganda, I'm sure has had this, being a legal director at Vipers Sports Club. And for those who might not know, so there was a round of 32 game between Bull and SC Villa. The game ended 1-0. Bull, who are the home team, winning it. And SC Villa scored a supposed legitimate goal. And the assistant ref waved offside. They went and appealed to the federation. And guess what happens? The federation decided to change everything about the final whistle from the referee once again. What did the federation say? The mistake was an extraordinarily wrong. So they had to replay the game. Yet the final whistle had gone. So the game was replayed. Fortunately for them, the home team Bull, who had gotten the decision on the day, still won the game. And then there's been a final, 2015, I think it must have been, again, SC Villa involved, record champions, who are playing against KCCA. Final was abruptly brought to an end, of course, abandoned the game because it was poor refereeing on the day. But still, I mean, we can find ways of punishing the referees, but once they blow their final, so that's it. But this one here, they clearly did not apply the rules once again. What happened is, first of all, on the day, we were not even sure who was going to be the center referee. Ordinarily, it should have been quite clear. The 4 officials walk onto the pitch. We are thinking the senior referee is the one going to be in charge. Eventually, it is changed. The one who's in charge messed up the entire game. And what does the federation do? They reschedule the final, suspend the key players for one club, and the other one clearly still gets its way and still wins. But it's a replay of a final. So here in Uganda, it's been quite common. But it's Uganda. And I'm not saying it's right, but at the highest level of African football, certain things should not be, I think, happening. And I think for me, one of the things that needs to be discussed is a bit of governance issue. That these things, it's not the first time they've happened. They could have happened at the level of AFCON because of how big it is, everyone has covered it. But I think club level, there are certain things that do go on, and CAF have become comfortable letting them go. Clashes between North African teams, West Africa, you always hear all these complaints, how an away team has been mistreated, how one team decides to stop playing. Of course, in 2019, between Esperance and Wydad, the rules were applied the right way. The referee asked the teams to ask Wydad to go back onto the pitch. They said no. Referee blew his final whistle, and CAF awarded the trophy to Esperance. Wydad go to CAS. CAS clearly upheld the decision because the rules were applied. You thought it should have been the same thing if CAF wanted to do it at the AFCON. They did not do that. But I think there's a bit of governance issue. Things that we take for granted, now at the highest of levels, they've come back to bite us. And this is a problem that I feel CAF have got to address. We can talk about wrong and right, but if we don't address it, this is such a big opportunity to change all this. And hopefully, CAF have learned the answer, because they can say whatever they want. It's been embarrassing, and it's not going to end only this year. This forever will be talked about, and I don't think it does African football any favors.
A very strong opinion there from Tuka. It would appear like we're in dire straits as far as Mr. Tuka here is concerned. Raymond, maybe you can jump in right here, since you've got a lot of experience having sat in a position that decides things like this. You can hear Brian raising governance issues, integrity issues. Could you, I think, first of all, from your experience, I think you've been very clear that the decision was wrong to strip Senegal. So in terms of precedent, should bodies like this have any place in deciding at all? Because these are the rules. It's appearing like we've created a precedent which, you know, most of you here think is dangerous. So what place should we have as far as, you know, arbitration mediation is concerned, boardroom decisions as far as football is concerned? Is this something you can comment on from your experience having handled matters like this at FIFA and CAF level? Briefly, Raymond.
Well, I think it is very important to have a body like the Court of Arbitration of Sport, because you're always going to get, and I say this with due respect, you'll never get two lawyers saying the same thing. They all have opinions. Whether it's right or wrong is immaterial. But you have a situation where two judicial bodies of an organization come up with two different variations of what they believe it should be. For me, the Court of Arbitration is important because I think they are the ultimate rule, and every sporting body accepts the decision of the Court of Arbitration. Fortunately, they don't just deal with legal aspects only on it. They will look at the rules, and specifically the International Football Association's body and definition. And that says that the referee has the final decision in terms of the laws of the game and sporting integrity. That is a very important word, sporting integrity. What is sporting integrity? What is the definition of it? The players are on the field to entertain the supporters, to play the game, to entertain everybody there. It is not, with due respect, sporting integrity for administrators to get involved in what they believe should be right or wrong. When the game finished and the referee blew, Morocco should have accepted that as an end decision. It wasn't the players that went to the appeal board. It was the Moroccan Association that went there. Those are administrators. They are not players. If you look at the opinion of the majority of ex-players and people there, that's why you need people like George Weah, for example, who played at the highest level, getting involved in administration. You will find a lot of times that the administrators don't look at the rules of the international body. They look at the rules of their own association and make decisions. I've already said to you that the Court of Arbitration is important. There are precedents. As Brian correctly says, there was the precedent of Wyatt, where Kaz came out and gave the right decision. You know, but go back to the beginning of the African Cup of Nations. The very first African Cup of Nations was played between Morocco and Guinea. What happened in that game, the final? Morocco walked off the field. They physically walked off the field and didn't come back for a period of time. And when they came back, yes, they ultimately won. But that's exactly the same situation here. And you've had numerous cases where CAS have not been bound by precedent. They look at all the aspects. They look at the legal aspect, as John says. They look at what the rules say. Is there a gap between the rules and between what happened with the referee? And then they look at sporting integrity, which to me is very important. And if you take sporting integrity into account and you look at the time period that this came, you will see that, in my opinion, rightly or wrongly, I believe that CAS will come to the correct decision. But more importantly, the thing that nobody seems to be dealing with is the reputation that this has done to the African continent. I know that the current president has tried very hard over the last few years to ensure that African opinion is right at the top by everyone. Everybody's jumping in and slamming African football as this is what's happened. It's corruption. It's this, it's that. That's not the way African football is. You know, I always say, if we are so bad, why does the rest of the world take all our players? Every single federation wants a player from Africa. So if we're so bad, why do you take them? For me, the thing is, it's going to take a long time, but I have faith that the current president of CAF will be able to restore the image, because he is someone who cannot be tainted in any way. Yes, he has to accept the responsibility because he's the president. But, that's the gentleman, for those who know him and have seen him, he cannot be bought from a financial point of view. He's probably got more money than most of the people. His integrity is beyond reproach. He was an attorney by profession when he started. He's a businessman. He's well respected in all the confederations. So I think what Africa has to do is get behind CAF and ensure that our reputation goes back to where it should be. Brian is correct. It'll be talked about for a long, long time. But we need to show the positive aspects of Africa and not the negative aspects.
I mean, Raymond, I've got a question for you. Do you feel probably because of the kind of person Motsepe is, because if you're clearly sensible enough, you will know that he wouldn't have been bought to make such a decision. Do you feel probably because he's a businessman, yes, he wants to grow the sport, but is not probably that much involved and wants to let the systems work? And in the process of doing that, he let these guys make a decision, and he doesn't want probably to throw them under the bus, but inside of him, he would not agree with such a decision.
Well, I think it shows exactly why he didn't get involved, because he believes in the independence of the judiciary. He doesn't know who is on the judiciary. I don't believe he's even met the people. What people forget is when people are asked to sit on the appeal or the appeal or disciplinary body, every federation prior to the annual general meeting is asked to submit names of people who they believe are independent and are capable to be chosen to sit on it. Those federations, all 54 of them, send the name of the person to the Secretary General. The Secretary General gives it to the executive, of which Motsepe chairs, and it then goes to the General Council, who approve it. So he doesn't even know. I think what he did was, with respect, correct, because he showed the independence of the judicial bodies. And when he came out with a statement, it may be his personal opinion that they may have taken the right or the wrong decision. But I think what he did was correct at the time, because if you side against your own people, what are you saying about their independence? You're saying that I'm an executive president as opposed to a non-executive president. He's a non-executive president. He doesn't get involved in the day-to-day. The person that gets involved is the Secretary General, who nominates the people who sit on the appeal board with either the chairperson or of the appeal or the disciplinary. So in my opinion, I think he made the right decision.
Raymond, let me just say, I don't even think it was a question of the right decision. He couldn't decide to get involved or not get involved. Correct. He simply cannot get involved.
Correct.
The disciplinary process has to be independent of the executive functions. And that's the way it has to work. If he did get involved, we would be also, again, another laughingstock.
Yeah, well, he didn't. And I think because of his knowledge, that's why he didn't do that. And I think he did the right thing. And the other perception that I must clear up, okay, he is not, a lot of people have said to me, oh, is the president in the pocket of Morocco? He's not in anybody's pocket, okay? There are 54 federations, and he treats every one of the 54 equally. So he's not there. The fact that Morocco hosts a number of CAF tournaments is because A, they have the facilities, B, they have the financial structure, and C, other countries don't tender, for want of a better word, for it. So if they're going to do it, then the executive make the decision. He doesn't make the decision at all. He goes by the majority of those in favor of hosting from his executive.
Yeah, but also, I must say, Raymond and Ohaga, I mean, I don't want to downplay and undermine who we are as Africans, but when I heard you saying he can't get involved, I think you've forgotten which part of the world we are. We know certain presidents would have gotten involved. Come on, guys. We know that.
But that's
the individual we're talking about, as Raymond says, he's an attorney himself. I mean, he fully understands how these governance structures must work. Yeah. And I think you have to separate him from the other presidents that you know.
But you understand where I'm coming from.
I understand where you're coming from. I fully understand. But I think we have to elevate this beyond your local sort of situation.
John is perfectly correct in his assumption, because you must remember, Africa came out of two presidents. I'm not saying anything about Issa Hayatou, but we had Ahmed there, and there was a lot of talk about money passing hands. You have not had one bit of financial problems or financial mismanagement or anything since Motsepe took over. He has tried, he's made sure that Africa is right up there as far as the tournaments are concerned, as far as the players is concerned. And as I've said to you, his integrity has never, ever been questioned. And I don't believe it will ever be questioned. Remember, he's the first vice president of FIFA, together with the guy there. And, if you're going to look at him and say, well, yes, because of what has happened in the past, I think it's totally wrong. I think you've got to give the man credit. If this hadn't happened, and it comes back to, if the coach of Senegal hadn't pulled the players off, we wouldn't be talking about this. As you said, Brian, we'd be talking about one of the best tournaments ever. Okay, I'm not saying Senegal were right. They were totally wrong. African football was saved as a result of Sadio Mane and what he did by bringing everybody back on. That was the thing that certainly helped African football, because it showed that somebody has integrity, somebody believes in the laws of the game. Morocco then came on and took the penalty. And again, I repeat, they didn't say to the referee, ref, we're taking the penalty under protest. They could have scored that goal. They didn't. They then went into extra time. And that, for me, is where sporting integrity comes in. They didn't win at the end. So now they've taken a second bite of the cherry, as it's so called, because they didn't win on the field of play. They're now looking to win off the field of play. And that's not what football is about.
And for me, what hurts me again is I feel like you've talked about, all of us know what Motsepe has done since he came into office. I'll tell you the influence, for example, he's had on the game in terms of increasing prize money. That was one of the things that has always been talked about. I mean, almost at every level, prize money has been increased. From my country, I mean, for any club to qualify for the continental engagements, if I tell you how much they were spending and how much comes in, I mean, Alex Luganda is a director at one of the football clubs that frequently are representing the country on the continent. For Motsepe to come and say, for as long as you've qualified, started with 50,000 and went to 100,000. Now, 100,000 and 50,000 may not be big to Mamelodi Sundowns, may not be big to Wydad, may not be big to Al Ahly. But for a Ugandan football club, it's massive, because that would offset so many items on the budget that football club would have had at the preliminary level before they get into the group stages, where before the money was. But even at that level, if you make it, the money massively went up. Now, it's a shame that we sit here and all we're talking about is how wrong CAF is, probably Motsepe was bought, and it's because of one bad decision that is talked about. I mean, Jamie Carragher called our tournament not a major one. And even with this decision, a tournament doesn't cease to be major because someone has made a wrong decision, but we've given them a platform to go on and say all these sort of things. And for me as an African, it hurts and it looks like it will go on forever, because the danger is the discussion won't stop now. When CAS overturned that ruling, it's still going to be a discussion asking, what were those guys thinking? So we are all over the place, and I don't know how they will overcome it, but
so you're sure that CAF is overturning it?
No, CAF is doing it, I can tell you that.
Jamie Carragher has made other comments that have previously been discredited, so let's not use him as our gold standard.
That's true. No. And I said it wasn't smart of him. I was basically trying to make a point of him not being smart and not being knowledgeable enough.
He would not make that comment in front of Didier Drogba, or in front of Sadio Mane, or in front of George Weah, I can assure you, because he has never, ever reached the heights that they have. You know,
and those are some of the few.
It's the same as in doping. We always say an athlete will never ask for drugs. It's either the parent or the coach will ask to help improve his thing. So don't live your life of what happened in the past. Look at the positive of everything.
Right. So anyhow, before we have Ikena coming to tell us about how strong the Senegalese case is, let's just get done with integrity, which has been introduced in this conversation. Mr. Ohaga, now that we have this drama in front of us, we've noticed that we have now shifted from to a 4-year cycle after Pamoja. And I think also with the introduction of the African Nations League. So now that we are talking integrity, how do you think this will, affect player welfare, across East Africa? This longer cycle, do you think that it will diminish the integrity of African sport as we're seeing it? Do you see any angle to this at all, in your view?
Well, in terms of CAS's announced transition to a 4-year cycle, when I looked at the CAF website, what I saw was a confirmation of the launch of an African Nations League, and then the intention to host a senior national team competition every year, except in FIFA World Cup years. But the regulations still describe AFCON as a competition organized every other year. So I'm not certain about that. The one thing I can say, though, is that scarcity can increase value, but only if finality is trusted. So the longer period you have between tournaments, the more expensive a governance era like this one becomes, because people will have a long time to mull over it, and CAF will be under the cosh for a long time until the next tournament, when everybody is watching to see whether that error has been corrected. So it can make that error even more expensive. I think a shorter period allows them a quick turnaround to be able to correct any errors of this nature. And for me, I'm looking at this more as a learning point rather than painting Africa as all black, because I think that across even into Europe, there have been cases of this nature. The referees make mistakes all the time. Governing bodies make mistakes. Look at the fines imposed on Chelsea. Look at what's hanging over Manchester City in terms of financial fair play. So, guys, let's not say that this is something that is specific to Africa. It is a learning point, and we must take it as that. Now, from the player welfare perspective, what my understanding is that CAF wants this new structure basically to align African fixtures with the wider football calendar. Is that so that reduces the club versus country conflict, and also it delivers better financial benefits to member associations. And the way I see it, these are clearly legitimate welfare objectives. But the question that we have to ask ourselves, and what the real metric is here, is what will the total player load be? Not the question of frequency. If the flagship becomes less frequent, but then there are other senior competitions that intensify, then clearly the welfare dividend that players enjoy is then less or is smaller. So I think player welfare is improved by rationalization, not just by frequency. And so this must be rationalized completely across the board. I think there are wider issues here from a commercial perspective as well. And you will see that in my LinkedIn post, I also tried to talk about legitimacy as a commercial asset. And I look at this from sponsors and broadcasters' perspective. Somebody said this was going to be the best tournament so far. And that's from the published numbers, that is actually the case. When I was looking at the numbers, they were very impressive, actually, because CAF's statistics say that AFCON produced over 90% growth in competition revenues. It had 23 sponsors, up from 17 in 2023, and up from 9 in 2021. CAF's figures also say the tournament generated 6 billion digital views, and there was a 61% audience growth across Europe, Asian, and South American markets. So this has been a really, really commercially successful tournament from a CAF perspective. But, you know, the thing is, sponsors and broadcasters don't only invest in the football. They invest in certainty, in climax, in the finality. If the winner of the final can be changed months later, then that certainty changes, the risk profile changes. Sponsors' activations become unstable, campaigns become contestable, even the archives that broadcasters or sports journalists rely on becomes muddled. What are you going to say when you're promoting Pamoja 2027 in terms of your narrative looking back on AFCON 2025? Even rights holders like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, you know, we start to become nervous about whether it will be as commercially successful because of the uncertainty that is reduced. So this commercial argument is not abstract. It actually connects with the governance credibility because that really impacts market value. So when CAF says that it is restructuring the calendar and the new model is supposed to generate financial and commercial benefits for member associations, those benefits depend on trust in the adjudication of the tournament. And so this is really, really pivotal for us going forward. And that's the way I see it. So, you know, Pamoja will not be judged by stadiums, roads, hospitality. It will actually now be judged, something which spectators don't ordinarily do. They don't look behind the scenes to look at the dispute resolution mechanism. But now that comes into focus. And it will now be judged on the question whether African football has built a dispute resolution culture that equals the stature of this event. That's what I would say, Moses.
Right. Thank you, John. And Brian here is itching. You know, Brian is used to being the one asking the questions, not answering them. So as you notice, at some point he took over my job, but that's okay.
I could actually see him itching. I see him itching to jump in.
I have told him to jump in. I've given him leeway so that we.
And clearly, and I think this can be answered by anybody on the panel. I mean, Ikena, Raymond, Alex, or Alex, even yourself, or other. There could be something that we may not openly say, but I don't know what you make of that 4-year cycle. Could it also be an advantage given the problems that Africa will go through in terms of facilities being ready for certain tournaments? Because imagine what East Africa has to go through. I mean, the AFCON was held just yesterday, and before you know, next year, there's another. There's barely any time. It's practically a difference of a year, if not months. And if it's definitely in mid-year, June or July, it could be a year. But is it something they also thought of, feeling, you know what, a cycle of 4 years, if we choose a country, because you would want to spread out and give opportunities to as many countries as you can to host this tournament. Do you feel a 4-year cycle also saves us on the issue of infrastructure not being ready when it's a 2-year cycle? But also, isn't there a danger of, if the African Nations League is not taken serious, isn't there going to be a danger of probably African countries spending a whole 4 years without playing quite competitive football? I mean, the nations?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there is the issue of enough time to develop your infrastructure. But I would like to think that at the point when you're putting in your bid, you have your infrastructure ready, or you have a blueprint of your infrastructure ready. Yeah.
That's always the case.
The problem
That's always the case, but it doesn't work out like that. We all know.
Unfortunately. And the problem is that we then, even if we had 4 years, we probably will wait until the last 2 years to ensure that the infrastructure is ready. So
Right.
I take your point. But there's also the point of waiting 4 years before the next tournament comes around. If we use that time building value, building infrastructure, building structures that are sustainable, and learning, and so on and so forth, well and good. My point is that it depends what we use that time to do. Yeah? If you just sit on your laurels and wait, and then spring up at the very last minute, then we have wasted the 4 years.
I think the other point that needs to be made is, once you have a 4-year cycle like we have, you're giving the countries the opportunity to improve their facilities as a result of the more finance going into club competitions, various other competitions. There's more money. And again, when a country submits its tender to CAF, it sets out a plan of what it's going to do. I can only equate what we did in 2010. We thought we were ready in 2006 to host the World Cup. Unfortunately, we didn't. Yes, the infrastructure was there. But in 2010, we had better infrastructure. We had better understanding. We had better finance. And I think every country that wants to tender for a particular hosting of an event has that opportunity. And as John says, you can't just sit and wait for 2 years. You have to start well before. You have to start before you submit your tender, and you have to know that you have the right facilities, you have the right people, you have the right finance to do it. You've got the sponsors you can't do it just by the federation. You need your sponsors, you need your partners to come in with you. And I believe what they will create is a positive environment. And if you've got that positive environment, it benefits the country. And if it benefits the country, it helps the supporters and the people who support the game. Because we cannot have any game without the people in the country, without the supporters. Football would be dead. You saw it during COVID, where we played with empty stadiums. There was no atmosphere. The first people that lost out were the supporters. The supporters go to a game, and whether there's 100,000 or 40,000 or 50,000, they're there. And the young children who are 10 years old, in 4 years' time, they're 14 or 18 or whatever it is. And that's the future that we've got. So I believe that you've got to look at it on a positive attitude and say, right, we have the facilities, we have the infrastructure, we have the finance, let's tender. And if we get it, fantastic.
Right. So anyhow, we would like to switch things up a little bit. Thank you for that, Raymond and Mr. Ohaga. Mr. Okoli, you've been waiting a long time. We want, first of all, to know whether there are any recommendations that you think can be made structurally, some structural reforms that CAF can consider, or FIFA, to prevent a recurrence of this drama. I think the general view, and I think you put it, the decision was diabolical. How do we prevent a recurrence and restore credibility to African football? But can you also speak a little bit about the case that you think Senegal is going to put forward at CAS as an experienced arbitrator? I think the jury has already deliberated, and we know what the jury is saying. If you can talk a little bit about the Senegal case, how you think they should put it forward, and then maybe also give us a rundown on what reforms could be recommended to CAS and FIFA, considering we are hosting here in East Africa this very tournament next year?
Thank you very much, Moses. I will start by saying that this controversy is not it's not merely about who won the AFCON final. It involves other issues. So what will prevail in modern football governance? Is it sporting facility, a penalty on the field, or a strict regulatory enforcement of the field? Okay, so here the dispute, we have to look at it from the point of view of the regulatory framework of CAF, the laws of the game under FIFA, and the supervisory jurisdiction of CAS. Okay, so because in this case, we have to, of course, the distinction, the referee's decision on the facts should, under the laws of the game, as has been pointed out, are final and binding. And in this case, the match was completed. Okay. And the result was produced and validated, actually. And then the regulatory enforcement, looking at Articles 82, that is the AFCON regulations, Articles 82 and 84, and imposing for withdrawal. I may quickly have to say, as has been pointed out earlier, I don't think that the AFCON regulations, I think they are inelegantly drafted. So, because when you look at Articles 82, 83, and 84, as has been earlier pointed out here, 84 talks about when there's a contravention of Articles 82 and 83. And 82 and 83 are mutually exclusive, I think. So one talks about if you refuse to play or you walk off without the permission or authorization of the referee. Then the other one talks about, if you're not dressed and ready to play at the time designated for the game, that's 83, and at most 15 minutes thereafter. And then you now forge or match both of them to say, if you contravene 82 and 83. So somebody can make the argument and say, if you're talking about 82 and 83, didn't say 82 or 83. So like I said, just to reiterate that point, that it's inelegantly drafted. Then, of course, one of the questions will be the conduct of the Senegalese. Will you call it a temporary protest or something that will trigger automatic withdrawal in the circumstances? And then we look at, so for the Senegal case, some of this, what I will consider some strength or the arguments that should be put up or that may be put up by Senegal is you have to look at it to say, well, the match was completed. So the match was resumed and completed. The referee could have ended the game. Maybe because if we are looking at, I think you had about 15 minutes thereabout that the Senegalese walked out of the pitch. Of course, I think Sadio Mane remained on the pitch. So the referee had a number of options. He could have ended the game on that basis, maybe, or when they walked back in, because they left without his permission, he could have cautioned every one of those players with the attendant consequences. So the match was resumed and completed, and no forfeiture was declared on the field of play. So the question would then be, should CAF now retroactively convert a completed match into a forfeiture? So for me, the argument could be basically more like a contextual rather than literal, because maybe, like John had pointed out sometimes, if you look at it, if you interpret Section 82 and 84, literally, you may say, well, that it's couched in such a way that, oh, there has to be a forfeiture. But you must look at all the surrounding circumstances, and with particular leaning to sporting integrity. The referee, the match resumed and ended. So you have to have legal certainty. So Senegal was crowned champion. And let us not forget, of course, sanctions were imposed without forfeiture because they say, oh, the federation and some of the players fined and then suspensions. Okay, so, and in all of this also, we must look at proportionality. So when you then say you strip Senegal of the title after 2 months. So for me, those are some of the issues that the Senegal will raise. And like I said, it will depend on the interpretation. And so for me, it has to be contextual in this case. And the strongest point, to my mind, is the fact that the match was resumed and completed. And the cup and everything, the ceremony, everything done, medals awarded. And then can you then 2 months after, then begin to talk about, oh, Section 82 walk off? Because if you then, like I said, how do you interpret that section? If it's contextual, then I don't think, because I want to believe that it is supposed to be a situation where a match was abandoned. Yes, so if there was a walk-off and then referee the match abandoned, that's a different situation than in this case. And all of those could have been done in the circumstances, but they were not done. So I don't think that should be revisited. Of course, if you want to look at what you could consider a weakness of the case, then you have to look at the mandatory language of the AFCON regulation, where shall be considered loser, which may suggest an automatic consequence. And then, of course, the issue of duration, whether, say, 14, 15 minutes is unusually long, and could it be considered a refusal to play? But like I said, all of that could have been determined there and then by the referee. So if the referee then, for whatever reason, agreed for the match to be resumed, and then everybody came in no protest, as has been pointed out, and you played the match to conclusion and lost, for me, that should be that. So I think the bottom line is that Senegal has a credible and arguable case. Yes, that's... then we look at what should be done. For me, this incident, I think John pointed it out, we should not, across the continent, there are issues, all sorts of things. Even in the English Premiership, sometimes you see some decisions that you look at and you begin to wonder. So for me, we should take it as an occasion to reflect and to see what improvements that can be made, especially for future tournaments. So this dispute, of course, it's kind of exposes some systemic weaknesses in CAF's dispute resolution model. So we look at timing failure. This decision was delivered nearly 2 months later. For me, it undermines sporting certainty and commercial stability. I think it has been mentioned here. So there should be a fast-track dispute resolution mechanism in all of this. So final match disputes, final in particular, so I will get to the tournament itself, but for a final, there has to be, to my mind, one of the things they may want to consider is having a standing fast-track panel for disputes to be resolved within 48 hours at most. Ideally within 24 hours, or definitely before official confirmation of whatever result, if there's a dispute, because this is not very common. This is not something that is not common. So for a final, there has to be such a mechanism in place. I mean, we have precedents. We look at the ad hoc panel that CAS on for Olympic Games, and then even for UEFA. So these are panels that will be set up and then deal with anything arising from, within the tournament, or at least again for the in the final itself. So you just have to have a standing fast-track panel for major competitions like CAF, AFCON rather. So modeled, like I said, on we have the Olympics, we have the UEFA. They have such what you call emergency arbitration mechanisms. So again, we may then look at.
Ikenna, you're saying that 2 years, rather 2 months, is not fast enough.
No.
It should have happened in 24 hours.
Most
1
48.
hour.
That, like I said, if you look at the Olympic Games, of course, there's this ad hoc CAS thing for the Olympics. Yes. So decisions, if there are disputes of eligibility and all of that, it is determined within 24 hours.
Correct.
So I'm saying for CAF and AFCON being a major tournament, like somebody said, ignore Karaga. Karaga, I'm sorry to use the word, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So for a major championship or tournament like CAF, you will need to have a standing panel, in my view, that should be able to determine matters as they come up. But for the final particularly, I mean, they could work out, they could have a mechanism where whatever it is escalated directly to CAS. So to set up some sort of ad hoc panel that will deal with it and determine it as quickly as possible. So not after the game is played and all of that, and then 2 months thereafter, then you then begin to make decisions.
Give a ruling. Yeah.
Where is the integrity of the whole thing? So you have to have that sporting integrity, because at the end of the day, like John pointed out, you have to look at the legitimacy of the whole thing. So even outside of the strict legalese of it all, you must look at the surrounding factors. How do you explain it that a tournament is finished on the field of play, and then it's not an issue where you say, oh, you know what, after testing, team A, maybe 3-4 players failed a doping test, or they use players of different nationalities to come and play the game. So that's a totally different thing. So we also have to quickly, we must look at the regulations as well. Okay, like was pointed out, they need to update that, those regulations, and in doing so, it has to be clearly put out there that once a match is completed, results should only be overturned in exceptional, clearly defined circumstances.
Right.
Yes, not in this kind of situation. So, and then the section 82 and maybe 83, you look at it and maybe tweak it in such a way that define the full parameters of it. So you may need to distinguish protest, delay, and then abandonment of a game. So rather than a situation where you have some ambiguity, which is part of what is at the heart of this dispute, and then you look at proportional sanctions framework, as it were, you may just like, introduce graduated sanctions, like what has happened here, where you say, fine the federation and maybe suspend some of the players involved. You could even give sanctions that are really very severe in terms of suspensions. You may say, for 6 months, even for 1 year. But what you did, because like I said, what Senegal did was abhorrent. It shouldn't have a place in sporting competitions. Absolutely. But how do you deal with it, or how is it dealt with, after it had happened? That's what we're talking about here.
Right.
Okay,
right.
so this could then be an opportunity for us to look at the governance reform, stronger dispute resolution systems, and which, of course, all of this has to do with have its consequences when you look at commercial and reputational stability of the tournament. So for me, I would say that this is not just about a title. No. It is about the credibility of the competition itself. AFCON is a major tournament. Major tournament. I mean, anyhow you want to slice or dice it. And then really, if sporting results can be undone after the final whistle, 2 months after the final whistle is blown, then it certainly undermines the integrity of the tournament. So that would be my take for now.
Thank you, Ikenna. I'm curious to know,
Yes.
Practically how an ad hoc panel would have handled this matter under those circumstances. People walking off, walking back, and then the ref blows the final whistle. So practically, but you can hold that thought. We want to listen to Mr. Alex Luganda. Ikenna, when you come back, you can maybe paint a picture on practically how an ad hoc panel could have handled such a matter under those very interesting circumstances. But Alex, you've been waiting for a while and holding your horses. So, and I think people that some of the panelists here have sort of chipped away into what I wanted to ask you. We are hosting Pamoja in 2027, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya as co-hosts. And we know that this ruling has implications. And I think we've heard that from a sponsorship confidence perspective, the picture that has been painted, it might have an effect on this competition. Do you agree? How do you see this competition, the whole effect that AFCON 2026 might have? Again, there's an advocacy here for stricter on-field protocols, as Ikenna has put it. Do you agree? Do you want to just tell us what your thoughts are, Alex? Also knowing that you have been in the footballing space for a while, you have argued with our FA when we've had interesting scenarios, and I don't want to bring in a club of interest, but we would like to hear what your thoughts are. We who are co-hosts of Pamoja 2027, and how you think we should prep ourselves so that the snowballing effect does not affect commercial viability and everything that the panelists have said here that can influence or impact the success of the 2027 tournament. Alex, over to you.
Thank you very much, Moses. And I think I'd like to thank my co-panelists because you brought out very, very pertinent issues as far as the impact of this decision is concerned. I would just like to say that the precedent of the CAF Appeal Board ruling is unprecedented. So that's why it's causing a lot of debate. I'd also like to say that with whatever I'm going to submit is without prejudice that I have served on the CAF Appeals Board because I was seconded by the Ugandan FA sometime around 2013 to 2015 to serve on the same CAF Appeals board. However, for Pamoja, I think we have more problems to deal with right now, to compound it with the negative vibe that comes with this decision. What we would look for is positivity, a lot of positive vibe as we are marketing the Pamoja 2027 AFCON. However, directly to how it is going to influence, most of the issues have been highlighted by members, but there is a new concept now. If this decision stands, then we go into 2027 when the sanctity and autonomy of Law 5 of the IFAB laws of the game and regulations, which gives the referee autonomy, is going to be non-existent. I think, Moses, what we have, if this decision stands, we shall be having what we call technically provisional results. That when a football match ends and the whistle blows the referee blows the final whistle, you're not supposed to celebrate a lot and even slaughter your chicken, because if the decision of the CAF appeals board is not overturned by CAS, the end of the game shall be technically referred to as provisional results. So we shall say Vipers provisionally has won the game against KCC, maybe until we get results from any boardroom engagement thereafter. But on the positive side, I think the decision as we go into 2027, teams, clubs, federations are going to become more alert and alive to the rules of the game. Because what has happened to Senegal, unfortunate as it is, likely no other team during the 2027 AFCON would like to protest in that mode and walk off the pitch or do another of the actions that would of rules and the CAF president, and it's like integrity. Maybe it will help because bottom. Yeah, the other elements. Sorry, I'd gotten off. I think there was an interruption. Hello, Moses, are you getting me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Alex. We had lost you for a little bit, but you're good now.
Okay. So I'm saying that as we go into the 2027 Pamoja AFCON, we are also getting into a situation of what we call boardroom, the rise of boardroom decisions. If this decision, for example, is not set aside by CAS, I will tell you, I was joking with my colleague that the Moroccan football team, national team, lost the AFCON final 2025. But the Moroccan Football Federation won the AFCON final 2025. and that is because this new trophy won in the CAF Appeals Board decision was not won by the Moroccan football team. It was won by the Moroccan administration, football administrators. So as we go into 2027, if the situation remains like this, and I think following more, then it's likely that federations will become more active in these competitions through the boardroom than the clubs that prepare to be on the pitch and win the games on the pitch. But the other, because the challenge is that we are focusing more on the decision to forfeiture. But this decision of the CAF appeals, which I think a bit altered the display committee's decision, also penalized Morocco. So for some of the actions and sporting actions that the ball boys and the other lesser incidents that occurred in the final. And I think for me, as we move into the 2027 Pamoja, there is going to be a heightened host nation responsibility in areas of the ball boys, because remember all the incidents where the goalkeepers, towel was being pulled away, how they were behaving with the balls, the laser incidents, the match safety and security precautions, because we had incidents of the Moroccan fans hurling insults and becoming a bit uncontrollable following those incidents and throughout the game at times. So as we go into the 2027 Pamoja, I think for me the implication of this ruling is that the host nations for the AFCON competitions are going to get more serious and give a lot of attention to those particular areas. On the element of commercial, and the members have talked about this, which is very legitimate. I would like to associate, but I would like to say that, for example, CAF has really improved. And right now, as we speak, the commercial value of the CAF competitions has really increased. I think it was either Ikoni or Haga who was giving the statistics of how many sponsors have come in from the 2023 tournament to the 2025 tournament, and the trajectory was still improving. But what we need to understand is the perspective of brand, because the sponsor will look for legitimacy for the brand. So CAF appeal board focus more on the legality concept. And in marketing, it's not more of legality. For commercial value, legitimacy brings more money than legality. And I don't want to be misunderstood that illegality is what brings money. No. But legitimacy brings in more money and acceptability to a brand. And that's what would ordinarily attract more sponsors into the game. So we have now a controversy over finality. And I would like to say, Moses and members listening in on this session, that a football final is a story. It's a brand. You know, it's a moment that is lived once. You don't live it several times. I'm just imagining, for example, back in my clan tournaments, after the final, if the award was a bull, that the winner would take a bull. I'm just imagining if Senegal's trophy was a bull, which we usually slaughter either on the night of the final or the following day. So would the appeal decision, how would you interpret the appeal decision 2 months later when the bull has already become manure?
Alex, you bring back the bull, in other words.
when the bull has become manure. So I think for me, it's something that is a lesson for us to pick as we go into the preparations for the 2027 Pamoja AFCON bid. I don't want to dwell into all the other issues because they have been highlighted by my colleagues, and to give maybe the floor back to you and an opportunity if there are any other questions that we have to respond to. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Alex. I think we have some comments here, and we would like to open up the floor so that the people on this call can ask some questions. Already I see a comment from Maktoum Muziransa, who is one of the journalists.
Moses, before you open it up.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Because Alex talks about the bull, but think about betting companies.
Right.
I mean, who paid out immediately after the final whistle?
Yeah.
They paid out. So now I even read that some betting companies are now paying out again on Morocco's supposed victory. So where does that leave them?
But how do you pay out before you get a refund of what you paid out? Supposedly wrong.
How are you going to get a refund from all this?
The betting houses that are paying out again are not serious. They have no trust in cash. Come on, they should wait for cash.
Or somebody betted the CAF appeals board.
Possible. But I also think I've just been having a chat when we're muted with Moses, and I think one of the things we're overlooking is while it's wrong what Senegal did, I think over the years we've seen at the AFCON tournaments where you feel the host nation is overly favored in some ways, and it can happen elsewhere across the world. But we've seen it happen. But some, I think, take it to a whole extreme levels. I don't think Senegal walked off that pitch, however wrong they were, just because of a penalty being given. And I've not had any Senegalese dispute the penalty. One, they're asking why their goal is not given, because it should have. I don't, in any case, it's Ashraf Hakimi fouling, not the Senegalese. But I think also the things that happened prior to the final that they had raised, not getting enough tickets, feeling that the hotel was not a five-star stuff. And that's subjective because the Senegalese could have been playing mind games too. But you have to look at all those factors because it's not the first time you hear complaints from either an away team, maybe in the Confederations or the CAF Champions League tournaments, or at the AFCON where you feel there are teams that have not been treated the best way possible. And I think that's a major cause in some way at major tournaments, and CAF needs to look at them. And I think it's part of the governance issue because we could look at the regulations all we want, but there are things that force people to look away from the regulation and say, whatever comes, we are ready for it because we've had enough of what has happened. And I think those are things that CAF needs to look at quite seriously.
Right. So I think let's take some questions. You raise interesting issues, Brian and John. I don't know what betting companies. First of all, I don't know how they're going to manage this risk. We already have some two hands here. We have got first of all, Mr. Matthias Nalianya is a senior lawyer in Uganda here. Matthias, if you can unmute yourself, switch on your video, and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Moses, for putting up this discussion. And thanks to all the panelists for the excellent views that have been put across for our benefit. I have two comments or questions. The first one is, I don't know whether you guys have had the benefit of that obnoxious decision. It will be interesting to know really the reasoning that led to that decision. Because all the panelists seem to say it was entirely wrong. But if people are so unanimous that it was entirely wrong, how could they have come to such a decision? It will be interesting to see how they came up to those conclusions. I don't know whether such decisions are public knowledge or they are confidential. I hope at some point we get to see it. But secondly, I think mention has been made, I think Toku and others have mentioned the totality of circumstances of that match. Really, what should have been the reasonable thing to do? I think there were some circumstances that had built up. There were disturbances in the stands. The ball boys had been winding up I think the Senegalese goalie. There were a lot of nefarious doings around the pitch.
During these towels.
Yeah, so all those things can be really cited to explain the walkout. What may have prompted the walkout was a denial the award of the penalty, but things have been building up, and all this perhaps can be looked at in totality and say that perhaps the referee's decision to resume the match was the correct one. And also the other interesting document, I think referees normally file a report, or is it the match commissioner? It would be interesting to see how they reasoned out that decision. These guys walk away and then they come back and you let the match continue. There must have been some written justification for those decisions. It will be very interesting to have a look at it. But all in all, I think I agree with all the views expressed that really the final result should have been allowed to stand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. We will have the panelists respond. We have a hand up from Shafiq, but before Shafiq comes in, maybe just to note, Maktoum here noted that we would be naive to believe that billionaires like Motsepe, I think where we started, can get involved in football and let it play out without influence. That's a view of one of our sports journalists who is on call. Lawrence Omuntu says, despite the existence of regulations and structures in place, what could have been the immediate remedy during, and after the championship to strengthen or improve the game? I think Ikena, you talked about the reforms, including Alex, which also goes back to the question I raised on practically what could have been done under those circumstances. But let's hear Shafiq, and I hope the panelists, you're noting these questions so that we can respond. Shafiq, in a minute, over to you.
Thank you so much, Moses, and the panelists for such an insightful discussion. I for one, to start with, I think the decision from the appeal board is regrettable, especially when it comes to the spirit of the game. But I think the major talking points, because if you are to examine the decision itself, the appeal board misdirected itself on the applicability of articles 82 to 85 of maybe the rule book, the AFCON regulations rule book. But also, I think what we missed out in the discussion is to do with asserting the fact that the CAF disciplinary code, the CDC itself, and Article 6 is specific on the fact that the referee's decision is final. So I want to ask, and this question goes to Alex, because if you follow the live events or the match itself, I believe that the live and the deliberate decisions of the referee had a huge impact on the game. If the players went off the pitch and came back from the dugout, and a penalty was taken, and the results which followed, and then we had the final whistle. So I think the major talking points, the legal talking points in Louisiana at CAS are going to be about what amounts to forfeiture or what amounts to an abandonment. So my question goes to Alex. I want to pick the gist, what he thinks, or what's going to be the legal gist or the legal talking point from Senegal as the appellant at CAS. What's going to be the major talking point? Because I feel like definitely it's going to go back to interpreting what abandons to forfeiture or abandonment. Thank you so much, Moses.
Alex has experience in these matters of abandonment. So I know Ikena spoke to this, but Alex, I think you can talk from experience, and I say this with tongue in cheek. So I hope that we can have your views. But if there are any other questions, please feel free to raise them. I can see some comments. Mr. Ivan Ojakol has a comment here. My question goes to Raymond. As a former chairperson and/or member of the CAF Appeals Board, what has been your experience with the application of Article 84? It seems problematic in its drafting. Is it a question of translation? Perhaps a French or Portuguese lawyer drafted the thing with an emoji there. So, Raymond, we'll ask you to respond to that. Letitia here, also on the other hand, for Morocco's, I think Letitia was asking about players' protection. Players train for years with the dream of lifting a trophy. When a decision like this is made administratively, it feels like their effort is devalued. Sports bodies often provide counseling or mentorship programs, but these are not always strong enough to counter the disappointment. So I think the question from Letitia, who is an athlete's representative on our NOC, she's asking what more can we do to protect players from this kind of thing. But I see a hand from Opolot Emmanuel Solomon. If we can take this question and then we can get into the answers and maybe one last round. So Opolot, Mr. Opolot, in a minute.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear moderator. I'll not depart so much from the earlier question of Shafiq. I think I also find it a little problematic, the context within which the board chose to decide that particular final. It seems to me the happenings, whatsoever happened on that day, was not in a way, where the foreseeability of the drafters, of the rules. I think they did not foresee the kind of scenario that happened in the final, because in the reading of that particular article, would portray that when players walk off before the match has ended, I think that article looks into a tournament that is still ongoing. But when you read the article and look into the final match, because it seems the tournament was coming to an end. It had come to an end. It was not ongoing. There was no other matches that would be played later. So to me, when you look at that article, it looks into a team that is participating in a tournament and forfeits the tournament that is still ongoing. Yeah, so the context within which that decision is made is a little troubling. I think
Right. Thank you, Emmanuel, for those comments. I think you largely
agree. Of amending the rules has to look into amending. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I think we had lost you a little bit. I thought you were done with your submission. But yes, I think we had the gist. You agree with the submissions of the panelists, and you agree that we should have some kind of reform with respect to the rules. Brian has been telling me here, Mr. Tuka, that he's not a lawyer, but he feels he has now become one, and this case is straightforward for Senegal. He would argue it and win it. He's going to tell us when I call him to come back. I told you, Brian is not used to answering questions. He's used to asking them. So please bear with him once in a while when he barges in here. But gentlemen, our time is fast spent. We would like to ask that you respond to the questions that have been raised. I hope they've been noted. There's another one that I think Ivan Ojakola has posted again. I will pick up on Shafiq's question and ask about the finality of a referee's decision. Just to correct him, it's on finality on referee's decision on disciplinary matters, not necessarily finality as far as sporting results are concerned. This seems deliberate across all CAF statutes. There is no definitive provision on the field of play doctrine. Can CAF lawfully waive the field of play doctrine since it purports to be independent? Very interesting. And Ivan, I wish you could speak to this because I know you've penned a very interesting missive on this subject. I wish you could come to the phone rather to the call, but our time is fast spent. I think let's invite our panelists to comment. And we're going to start with Mr. Alex Luganda, who is right now in shooting range as far as some of the questions are concerned. Alex, if you can take us start us off, and then we can have Mr. Ikena comment briefly. Then we can have the bush lawyer, if I may call him, who is seated next to me here, also swinging to give his opinion.
There was also one for Raymond, I think, from Ojakol.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Moses, I had missed out on one of the questions. I think I got off midway the questions. What was the particular question that I'm supposed to be responding to? Sam?
I think Shafiq agreed that the decision of the appeals board was regrettable. That's his view. But he wanted you to talk a little bit about what you think will be argued at CAS by Senegal. And he felt that the issues will be around what amounts to forfeiture or abandonment of a match. He wanted to know what your views are and whether you think that really this is where the Senegal case will be. Ikena talked a little bit about it, so it's really up to you to let us know what your thoughts are.
Thank you very much, and thanks to Shafiq. And I think Ikena brought it out, but also John, and also all the other members and the panelists, because the biggest challenge is grounding the decision in Article 84. And when you look at Article 84, it requires that both 82 and 83 must have simultaneously been breached. However, Article 82 and 83 are mutually exclusive. And for me, if you are saying that you're applying the rules in their strict and literal sense, which the CAF appeals body tried to do, then it becomes a bit dangerous. My colleague from Kenya raises very fundamental issues that the CAF rules are a bit legendary. They are due for amendment and updating, and I await seeing the CAF decision, because after the CAF decision, and as this conversation is going on, the need for reform, for law reform, is going to be very, very, very fundamental. So without wasting a lot of time, I'd like to associate with the number of issues that were raised in that respect. But you had an issue about the ad hoc arbitration proceedings that you had asked one of the panelists. Moses, I think it's you that I had asked one of our colleagues who was submitting. Now, for example, when the tournament is going on and you're aware that all these disputes are possible and they're likely to happen, then it is important that you have because the appeals body, for example, is an appellate body, but you have the bodies of first instance for purposes of decision making. Because what happened in this particular instance is that the judicial bodies ought to have disciplined their referee. But then the judicial bodies will sap the whistle from the referee and took over the referee's role. Because ordinarily we ought to have had the ref get in charge. If there was forfeiture and there was breach of 83 or 82, the ref ought to have seen it and acted. So what do you have in the referee's report? And that's why the views of senior counsel Nalianya become very important, because I can't even adequately answer
Okay, I think we lost Alex there. Raymond, I see your hand is up. We're going to call you to respond to some questions which were put, I think, to you directly. I don't know if it is a point of we used to say back in the day that it cannot be.
Moses, there are 3 points I want to make. Firstly, the gentleman raised the question about the administrators changing the referee's decision. Administrators cannot change the referee's decision. The only people that can change the referee's decision are the referee's committee when they review the performance of the referee. Secondly, someone asked about interference. I've served under Issa Hayatu, I've served under Ahmed, I've served under Patrice Motsepe. I can tell you that as chair of the disciplinary committee, I have never had one of those gentlemen try and influence me or to try and change a decision of the disciplinary committee, whether we got it right or whether we got it wrong. But I think the point that is the most important point for me is the current state of the rules. The rules need to be changed. We have tried numerous occasions to change the rules, and I'm throwing a curveball into it. What happens is when you try and change the rules, it goes before the executive committee. You have to understand that the executive committee are presidents of their federations. When you say you want to increase the sanction from $10,000 to $100,000, everybody says no, and then the rules are not changed. So I think the time has come where the presidents of the federations who serve on the executive of CAF have to put the game of football before their own federation and say what is good for our game in football. And once you've changed those rules and you've brought them up to date, because you must remember, football has revolved over the last 20 years. The rules that applied 20 years ago don't apply now. That's why you have the International Football Association's body. Those rules, as soon as they are changed, the federations and the continental bodies need to bring their rules in line. And until that happens, you're going to have this dispute between lawyers giving different opinions and judicial bodies having different opinions.
Super, thank you. I think I'd requested Ikenna to maybe comment briefly if he can. And I see there's more hands going up. Folks, our time is fast spent. Let's take one final question from Mr. Luzinda, whose hand went up, and then we can have Ikenna respond. We'll listen to Brian here, and then finally to John. Mr. Luzinda, you can open your mic and speak.
Yes, hello. Please again.
Yeah, Henry Luzinda, we're saying you have the floor. Keep it short because our time is fast spent.
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry, I just joined in, so I don't. What exactly is it I'm supposed to say? I've just joined in right now.
You put your hand up, so I thought you were asking a question.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. It's okay. You can just go ahead.
Right. So Ikenna, do you want to comment briefly on some of the issues that have been raised by the audience?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Ikenna, you have the floor. Go ahead, sir.
What you may want me to specifically speak to, but somebody said something about referee's decision being final under the laws. I think raised that issue or question. My response will be yes. If you're looking strictly at, let me use the word, the game or the match, the outcome in one sense. You see, there's the dichotomy between that and the regulations. So the regulations somebody or the argument is that no, the regulations do not really effectively affect the issue of the finality of the referee's decision. So you look at an instance, for instance, a match again is played, and the referee, at the end of the day, the match is won or lost by one side. That is the final decision. So, for instance, like the wild goose chase that the Nigerian, that calls itself Nigerian Football Federation, which effectively is an illegal body because it's Nigerian Football Association that has now rebranded to call itself Nigerian Football Federation, chasing against Congo Democratic Republic on the basis of ineligibility of players and then seeking to have them forfeit the match. So that is purely regulatory. It's the referee, the game had ended, the referee's decision stands, but under the regulations, they may have then say, oh, there's an infraction which affects the game or the match, not necessarily the decision of the referee. Okay, what makes this case, the Senegal-Morocco case, a bit, will I say, interesting or different is that the infraction or the regulation that is being called into play, to my mind, presupposes a situation where there have been a walk-off, that, let me use the word permanently, or an abandonment, but the game continued. So that's, in that case, interplay of what was the referee's decision vis-a-vis the regulations and how do you interpret it? Because it was the referee's decision to continue the game and then brought it to finality. And in this particular instance, I think that should act for something, or that should actually count for something for purposes of maintaining the integrity of the sporting integrity of the tournament. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ikenna. Final remarks, gentlemen. I'm going to start with Raymond. Should Senegal keep the title or should it revert to Morocco?
In my opinion, Senegal should keep the title based on sporting integrity. And I hope that everyone will continue to support African football because we deserve to be right at the top there. And that means all 54 federations supporting the president and ensuring that incidents like this are averted in the future.
Super. Thank you. Ikenna, Senegal keeps the title, Morocco takes the title.
Definitely, my hope is that Senegal keeps the title. Again, like Raymond has pointed out, for sporting integrity, if for nothing else. The game was played and lost on the field, and it should not be overturned in the boardroom. So Senegal should keep the title.
Alex Luganda, I don't know if you're still there. Should Senegal keep the title or it reverts to Morocco?
Yeah, I'm for Team Senegal keep the title. Looking at the proportionality of the sanction, you look at the prejudice. Yes, they breached, Senegal breached, walked off, but then they came back. So what was the prejudice that Morocco suffered by the 15 minutes walking off and coming back when they continue to play the match, vis-a-vis the maximum sentence which the appeal body has given? So I'm Team Senegal in this.
Right. Mr. John Ohaga, if you're still there, tell us, should Senegal keep the title? Should it go to Morocco? Even as you give us your final parting remark in a second.
Moses, are you asking about the title or the trophy? As I understand it, the trophy is in a military facility. So,
you know, there was a picture doing rounds of the Senegalese president with a trophy.
Yes. So I don't think there's any question about what's
about people coming to get it.
About Senegal keeping the trophy.
So, I think we mean both, a bit of both.
Maybe just the title. but you know, Moses, absent exceptional circumstances, I think the boardroom should be for negotiating commercial matters relating to football. The football pitch should be for determining who wins the tournament or the title. The moment the boardroom and the pitch begin to compete, then I think that African football will have lost it. That's my view.
Right. So, gentlemen, I'm going to ask Brian to have the final say, and he was also going to close out this conversation as somebody very interested in football. He's a pundit, and he does a lot of talk shows really that are related here. Brian, tell us your final thoughts, and then you can close us off.
To start with, I'm not sure Senegal have ever lost their title. I think they are champions and they will stay champions. Forget about what a few guys decided to do in the boardroom. So I'm not so sure the question is justified. So they will stay. And it's good that our guys put it right. It's in the military base. They can go and pick it if they feel they can do that. But I think they've never lost and they will not. I think by the end of the year, we can all agree that decision would have been changed. All I pray for and hope for that when we go to these major tournaments or any football games on the continent, referees and the people in charge of the games give teams of football an opportunity to win fair and square or lose fair and square. And I think for me, it's going to be very, very important that we do that. Anything other than that, we might be caught in all this. I mean, while it happened at the biggest stage, and I think for me, that's where the discussion is. We've also seen controversies in world football before. I mean, Juventus in the Serie A, when they were stripped of the titles, we know the hooliganism that has happened before in England, before everything changed. I mean, Germany, same thing. This happened at the biggest stage, and that's why probably it raised a lot of eyebrows. But also, it's something that we should celebrate as Africa. African football has now attracted such huge attention that this went all over the world and being discussed, however bad it might have been. So I hope we are discussed at the world stage for the right reasons and not the wrong ones. It's been an honor. It's been such a privilege. Moses, thank you so much for organizing this, and was good. Hopefully one day we'll meet in person, but it was fantastic having the discussion with all you gents.
And yet we've had the conversation in boardroom. So the boardroom is not so bad after.
The next one should be the military base.
Absolutely. On a soccer pitch itself. Gentlemen, may I request our audience to give, I can see some e-hands appreciating our panelists. I think they've done an awesome job. As you can see, 2 hours have gone past so quickly. This conversation is going to continue. It's not certainly done. We will be, we'll continue the discourse again in the spirit of Gumzo. So from us, the ALP Dispute Settlement Hub, we want to thank you for having participated. Please put your hands together in whichever way you can and appreciate our panelists. Mr. Brian Tukasingura, we thank you. Mr. Alex Luganda, you've been phenomenal. Senior Counsel John Ohaga, thank you so much for giving us these 2 hours. We appreciate. And I know, because I can see where you are headed. We had a conversation about your next program. Good luck with it. I think Mr. Raymond Hack may have left because he had a meeting starting on top of the hour. And of course, Mr. Ikena Okoli, Senior Counsel in Nigeria, who should be heading to the airport shortly. Thank you, gentlemen. And I think this conversation has only started. We will be continuing sometime in the future. God bless you, and would like to bring this to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moses.